The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic basis.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital. The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Hotline Show. My name is Edgar Mathew Karuhanga. Today is the 5th day of May. We're into a new month. The year is still 2025. I start this program with sad news. We lost Rajiv Ruparelia, Ugandan businessman and also son to one of the richest men, if not the richest man in Uganda, Sudhir Ruparelia. Rajiv passed on in an accident on the morning of Saturday, and unfortunately he crashed around Usega roundabout, and he is no more as we speak right now. Tomorrow is going to be the day when his body is going to be cremated at Lugogo. Everybody is welcome to show your support to the family of the Ruparelias. From the entire team here at Digitalk, and on behalf of myself, I would love to really wish him to rest in peace at the end of the day, and of course may God comfort his family. We start on that note, but also one of the bodyguards for the National Unity Platform president, that is Edward Sebufu, commonly known as Eddie Mutwe, has been arraigned in Masaka Court today. This comes after a week when he was held incommunicado, and according to the CDF, in his basement. Those were the words of Mr. Mhoska Inerugaba, who also posted the image of Edward Sebufu earlier on, which now brings back the traumatic experiences of 2020 and around that election cycle, where many of the young people were abducted, some tortured, and some of them even up to today have not been seen anywhere. It is really, really a sad note right there. We shall be telling you more about the incident of Sebufu and of course how it will go. But as we speak right now, he has been added to the charge sheet of some of the NUP bodyguards, or Bobby Wine's bodyguards, that were earlier arrested and arraigned in Masaka Court for alleged robbery and also destruction of the property of some journalists. So that is also a new story coming in from the National Unity Platform. Last, definitely not least, is the World Press Freedom Day that was celebrated on Saturday last week. Many journalists in this country are not happy with how the state operatives, especially the security operatives, have been treating them. So as they were celebrating their day on Saturday, the UJA, Uganda Journalists Association, highlighted these issues and some of the journalists that have been bitten, and some others, have got injuries, were able to talk about their experiences. And one resolution that came out of that dialogue or talk was that journalists will be handing down or refusing to cover the elections, the 2026 elections, if nothing is done to the perpetrators of their violations in that regard. And as we're speaking right now, the NRM is gearing up for grassroots elections that are going to be happening tomorrow. And there has not been a cabinet meeting today, and tomorrow there will not be a parliamentary sitting following the grassroots structure voting that is happening right now in various villages across the country. Those are that's just a few snippets on the news stories that are happening right here in Uganda. You are watching the Hotline Show, and my name is Edgar Mathew Karuhanga. We are always here every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. 2 hours of non-stop, conversations that we believe will make Uganda a better place at the end of the day. We're streaming live both on YouTube but also on Facebook, so you can be able to get this information on either platform at the convenience, at your own convenience. Allow me to welcome the guests for this evening. I have Mr. Barigayomwe Rogers. He is the chairperson of the Labour Party here in Uganda. You're most welcome, sir.
Pleasure, Edgar. Happy to be with you.
Great.
A good evening, our viewers.
Thank you. I also have the president of UPC, of one of the factions at the Uganda People's Congress, that is Mr. Joseph Ochieno, who is a panelist here. You're most welcome, sir, and a privilege to have you once again.
Thank you for having me. There are factions in UPC.
Yes.
Jim McKenna holds one faction. He's occupying Uganda House illegal, but with the backing of the state. The other one is Peter Walobiri, who is holding the party hostage in his chambers. I was elected president, but not declared. Okay. So I don't belong to a faction in Uganda People's Congress, and I'm too big for any faction in any political party, certainly not in Uganda People's Congress.
Thank you. And last, definitely not least, is the executive director for the Center for African Affairs and Diplomatic Studies, Mr. Kazooba. Charles, you're most welcome, sir.
Thank you for extending an invitation to me. So you have 3 factions in the UPC.
I've just told you there are 2 factions. I did not deny them. If you want that to please you.
I think I'm the moderator. I really don't want to ask the questions. Let's not delve into that conversation.
But you know what?
No, why you shouldn't is because you have elaborated this issue
That's correct.
Yes,
and then there are people who sometimes walk the streets of Kampala, but they've got their very particular political opinions which are dwarfed. Those are some of the opinions that Museveni alleged to, and that's why this country is suffering under NRA.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's always a privilege having you and having a conversation.
But good seeing you, Edgar, actually. You're looking fantastic today.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to start with the guest on the show, Rogers. I want to start with an issue of the death of Rajiv Ruparelia. He's not just a normal Ugandan. He's the managing director of one of the biggest conglomerates in this country. What's your comment on Mr. Rajiv and the death of Mr. Rajiv Ruparelia?
Yeah, it's unfortunate to lose such a young man, an entrepreneur. Certainly, he had taken over the empire of his father, and later on I'll discuss that in relation to the labor issues we are talking about. But I would tell you that it is an inclination that what God created in this world is enough for everyone, but I certainly have encountered, he was a happy man, young man, but he has been also used by the circumstances whereby right now we're talking about the protection of workers,
yes, sir.
Where if you see most of the rich people in the country, they are not rich as per se, but they are cheating on someone. And these are the normal workers. As we celebrated Labor Day on Thursday, we have reports as a Labour Party. whereby many workers in Uganda are not getting their rights of leave, rights of pay, and they are being abused, and they are being suppressed. Many of them don't have contracts, and actually it's because of the government is using the so-called investors to trample over the rights of the workers, of many of them. What I'm trying to say in relationship to the young Rajib is that he had been used by the system, and of course he had taken over the Sudil empire, and many times we get complaints from these workers of this empire that they have nowhere where the rights can be addressed because of the very powerful names. And I would say for Rajib, he's been a victim, just like we are seeing in the economic, that is in the economic sense, because he's one of the landlords of that area. But we see many victims, like we see in the military, we are seeing a victim. For me, I also think General Kainerugaba is also a victim of these young generation. They've been victims of a system which has been handed over to them. Like I'm telling you, he had to control an empire, but which is not operating under normal circumstances, especially pertaining the rights of workers globally. You know, it's in UDHR. This is enshrined. And even in our constitution in chapter 4, these rights are there and they are clear. But
are you trying to say the system was using Mr. Ruperelia?
Yes, because like I've told you, he was controlling over 8,000 workers. The Ruperelian have about 8,000 workers. But if you sample most of them, they don't have permanent contracts. Many of them don't have a right to live. And the condition, the circumstances they are working under. In any case, when you see most of the, like I've told you, the rich entrepreneurs in Uganda is because they are eating over an NSSF of a worker. Because many of these people don't declare those NSSF. So if you see, like someone is, most of the rich entrepreneurs in Uganda as per se, it's because of the unaccountable money they've eaten off an ordinary worker, and they accumulate. But
before we even complain on that, they're already employing those 8,000 workers in a system where employment is very, very tedious to get.
Yeah, if you go to,
and some of these people are not even professionals.
If you want to say quantity over quality, maybe you're right. And you see that is a system I think we are stuck off as government, because you are like, so long as, look at why you saw the traditional Western companies leave. If you see ShopRite leave Uganda, it's because ShopRite was upholding the rights of workers. They would pay them a minimum wage, they would give them leave.
But we have a minimum wage.
If you start, no, they in their standard, because okay, I would say because they have ShopRite in South Africa, so they would treat their workers as it is in South Africa. But when you see most of these supermarkets coming up, I can't name them, but you will know they will pick some bachiga from Kabare, and I would say it's like trafficking. Close them in a building, give them 100,000 per month, and then they will not entitled to leave. Maternity leave, once you get pregnant, you leave, you get it. Such a thing, and they give you, you're working in a supermarket, they give you 100,000 or 50,000, then they abuse, but of course they employ as many. Then these companies which are decent enough leave the market because they can't compete. These other ones are, first of all, also don't pay taxes. Most of these companies you see thriving in the Ugandan sense, they are even evading taxes. So as workers, they feel cheated. But like when you talk about quantitative, these are the investors who are being supported. But down there, we have reports of workers complaining against these individuals. And specifically, and I want to tell you specifically, the one you told me to comment about, we had several complaints.
Okay.
And indeed, I'm telling every Ugandan that there is enough. I mean, there is a just law by God, which brings everyone to equality. So you can manipulate systems, but I'm telling you, you cannot manipulate the divine.
That is Barigayomwe Rogers, the chairperson of the Labour Party here in Uganda. Let me come to you, Charles, on the issue of Rajiv Ruparelli and his death. What's your comment?
Well, the death of the sudden death of Rajiv was or is a calamity that has befallen Uganda. Rajiv is one of the youngest, he was one of the youngest entrepreneurs that had potential of moving their empire to the next level. And there's no doubt that the Ruparelli group has contributed immensely to the economy of this country. Albeit, of course, the challenges that we have in Africa. Seeing the Sudira and his family start from zero and grow such an empire here in Uganda is not easy. We have so many Indians that have been around, but they have not contributed as much as the Sudirs have contributed. So we've lost potential in terms of Rajiv. Rajiv had inherited the empire, just like a few other families. His almost age mates had also taken over. When you look at Morwana, Barbara and the brother, Geoffrey had taken over their father's, late father's empire. Mukwano, Alkan had also taken over. Chirumira, the son, actually Chirumira, a very close associate of Sudir. The son has also been groomed to take over, and many more. So there's that generation of the Rajivs that he had taken over the burden of carrying forward Uganda's economy to the next level. Now, when you see a person like Rajiv die just like that, some of us, we get worried, because me as an individual, I would like to see more people in the economy than in the politics. We have more people, Ugandans, in the politics than in the economy, which is very unfortunate for us. That's why we might not even develop very fast. And Rajiv has been a very good friend of the media. Even the father, by the way.
Yeah, the father likes journalists,
Yes,
at least that
but
I know.
also Rajiv has been very close to the media. He has supported some of them, those that I know, and they have been very happy with him. So what does it tell us? Rogers raises issues which, of course, we cannot ignore. But I want us to look at the bigger picture. There could be challenges that we face as Ugandans when we are interacting with investors. But we should not think it is their own making. It is the environment under which they operate that forces them to do what they do. Because at the end of the day, Sudi is looking at 8,000 people that survive on him.
And their families.
And their families. Me, as Kazooba, I always ask myself, how many families are surviving on me? How many people are saying, if Kazooba died today, then we may not make it to our destination? Maybe none. So every day you wake up, you should ask yourself, how many people are you employing? And this was, I think, Rajiv's responsibility. This university here at Kampala Road, Victoria University, I remember it was somewhere around Kamocha, as you're going to, near the Rwandan embassy. That's where it was, I think. Then they bought it. But it was a non-starter. I remember they tried to use sports to market it. It didn't work out. When it was handed over to Rajiv, he turned it around. And today you can see that it is competing with the well-established universities.
Yes.
So it means that the guy had potential in managing businesses.
Okay.
So as Ugandans, we should be very sad. And also to add, I also don't like their culture so much, the way they handle the dead, that they should burn you to ashes and bury ashes. That's, I think, how Indians are. So for us, in the African culture, when you lose your loved one, you can always go and cry and grieve on the tomb.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I don't know what will happen, but it is very sad. It is very sad for the country that Rajiv has gone too early, too early, really, and it is going to be a huge blow to Sudi himself as an individual.
Okay.
Because this guy, he was his heir and the only boy. When you look around the grandchildren, you don't see a boy there. So it is not easy. I don't know how he will recover from it. But at the end of the day, we leave everything to God. We only play our part and God takes over.
Thank you so much. 26 minutes past 7 p.m. You're still watching the Hotline Show. Let me come to you, Mr. Ochieno. Your message on the death of Mr. Ruparelia Rajiv.
I actually didn't know the young man. I didn't know him. I think I met him once, but I don't know much about him. But of course I know a lot about the father and the empire and the scandals, so that I definitely know. But really my sincere condolences to Sudhir, whom I know, and I must say, because I had issues with my phone, I actually didn't know about the whole thing until the following day when I was having a meal with a friend of mine who was a member of parliament, and so I was quite shocked by it. But I actually think the issue is primarily the circumstances under which the young man died. The young man was allegedly racing. The young man was allegedly racing on a racing car at a fairly high speed. But above all, the young man ramped onto roadworks pavement, which was possibly unmarked and in an unlit place by a motorway road which would have been done by some of the private contractors, possibly this company may even have been associated with it. And that's the mess in this country. I've lost close family members in road accidents. And last year, I think I told this program, I ramped on on Maram, on Agongoro Road.
Oh.
You know, and it was quite scary. It's one of the things that made me go and meet Kagina, a land before Museveni retired her and her system to suit him and other interests. So there was no signage, no warning. Granted, I was driving my tiny little mini modest UPC Wish, and I was driving reasonably responsibly. It could have been worse. That is all the mess of this NRA regime, 40 years. And so talk about anything else, you know, what was the circumstances on which this boy was driving and what was the state of the road? Was there signage? Was it lit? 40 years of NRA. That is the question. Why wasn't the road lit when I was, sorry?
One would say he was cruising on one of
whatever the case.
No, not the speed, not the speed itself, but the road itself. That's a very good road. In fact, the most expensive road in this country. Yeah. It was only that place that you talk about that is not lit. Most of the entire road is
it's taken to be the most expensive in the world.
Yeah, it is.
And being the most and being the most expensive road in the world does not make it glorious. It's not for us to clap. It's criminality, you know. But number two, the fact that it was a decent road doesn't mean that it should not have been lit. It's actually commonsensical. The more reason why it should have been lit. So somebody ought to take responsibility for that. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
And to interject, it's the laissez-faire kind of system of the government because, and some people think it's only politicians like us who should talk about it, but it has affected the businessmen, actually the biggest taxpayers, because the Sudil family is the biggest taxpayer. Yeah. And if they don't demand such changes, you see their victim? The biggest, they've been hit most by a system they've supported. Because some of these things, when we come and talk about it, they say, for us, we are not in politics, for us, we are in sports, for us, we are in music. But they have been, right now, I'm so sorry for Mr. Sudil, but he is so shattered. But this is a system he has helped to support, like he's talking about.
So that is it. But then as I was coming to the studios, it happens that there is unconfirmed reports that one of the buses, YY coaches, may have caught fire and many tens of people died. And because I just saw it in the clip and have no confirmation, I need to be responsible about it. But around Ginger, it's almost certainly the case that this is an accident that's happened, which is part of breaking news within the last few hours. And you look through that clip, I was stuck on NRA traffic in town. And of course, I had to do which in a way was possibly technically not part of the driving things that you should be in traffic and be watching a video. And I saw over several minutes, possibly towards 20, people were talking. I don't want to talk about the details, but there was no sign of a police vehicle. There was no sign of a fire engine. And as my brother suggests, it may also be the case that many people may end up being burnt without, beyond recognition. Now, this is an NRA mess. But guess what? As we discuss this, as Sudhir loses his fantastic, handsome, young, sharp entrepreneur son on the basis of what people are saying because they don't know the boy, you know? Lest you forget that I was on this program, talk about billions of shillings being given to the Sudhir group.
Yes.
I was on this program, talk about billions of shillings being given to Londra. I was on this group, on this program, talk about billions of shillings being given, hundreds in fact of billions, being given to Pineti and to some other dubious woman in Atiak. So these are really the context within which we're discussing this. And as I said, it's really a brief thing about this, but like all my colleagues say, it's a shattering thing. One, to lose a young man. And I really don't want to go into the excesses of privilege. Of course, the guy is an entrepreneur simply because he's got money, and some of the money is supposedly our money. And I don't want to say it in a bad way. I genuinely feel sad. But I'm just saying that at 34, a young man with a full life in future should not be dying unnecessarily like this, leaving a young wife with a young child. Certainly not in this country, and I mean certainly not anywhere, and certainly not from a motor accident, meaning something that should be avoided. Why? We should be having decent roads. 2, we should be having decent road signage, and 3, we should be having law enforcement, meaning police and police cameras, to make sure that we ensure, and public awareness to make sure that people, like including Rajiv, should know that maybe you shouldn't drink, drive, or shouldn't overspeed. These things are absent. You know what?
Yes.
Museveni and his son are busy treating, and they've left Ugandans for profit.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. 33 minutes past 7 p.m. I think we shall stop there on the issue of Rajiv. May his soul rest in peace. In case you want to join the funeral rites or pay some respects to him tomorrow, they'll be cremating his body at Lugogo. So everybody is allowed to go. So if you want to commemorate this gentleman, you can join his family and the rest of Ugandans to really wish his soul rest in eternal peace. As we are speaking, gentlemen, right now, Edward Sebufu, who is Eddie Mutwe, has been arraigned in Masaka Court. To the look of things, because journalists were not allowed to even get close to him, he was limping, and the few glimpses of footage that we got were showing his feet a bit swollen. And this speaks of the torture that we Ugandans have gone through every time there is an election cycle, which is a sad phenomenon. How are you going to deal with this, Mr. Barigayomwe? How will Uganda go through an election process without these issues? Beating journalists, that's where we started in the year, arresting candidates, abducting people. And this is continuing, business as usual. In fact, when you talk about this, it's just normal. This one has been abducted, the story is gone. And we continue. Mr. Barigayomwe.
I'm a believer, and in the Bible it says that if he is given a lot, he's expected to account for more. And I was joking with some partners here that I fear power. Some people have been given this power, and it's as if they own it, absolutely, and they have been abusing power. This power handed over to God, by God, is something which should actually be treated with trembling and fear and trembling, because and there is no family probably in the history of Uganda which has been privileged than the Kaguta Museveni family of being given all this power for all this long, because I personally don't think they've made it themselves. You cannot make yourself have power for 40 years. Yeah, I think they've been supported by God, but
seriously,
not what I believe,
not my God.
No, it says all power comes from above. I'm using the scripture, but one thing I know about God, you account for everything given to you.
You sound like
because I'm looking at the abuse of power continuously to this level of where, and I believe, for me, I want to believe, though I've not seen anyone come up, the PR, either the PR of the state is so weak, because someone should come up and deny these tweets we see. To say that you imprison someone and you should teach them runyankori. This is pure racism. Do you get it? And then, these things were talked about happen. Personally, our fathers went to fight because they wanted to liberate the thing. But I think they've reversed, they've done even worse than the people they went, who they accuse your kind of people, the UPCs. But to me, I'm more guilty of my Frunasa fathers. More than the history I've learned. I'm a professor of history and politics. I've had the history of Idi Amin. I've heard what they talked about Obote. I think the Obote thing was exaggerated. They have done it in our own faces as their children. It is so sad. I even can't believe. I look at my father who is still living. I say, I'm disappointed. Why did you leave me when I was a child in the first place to go and fake things, if this is what you meant? 78, I was abandoned by my father to go and be in these kind of activities, to restore, to reverse the history of Uganda. And in my own eyes, when I'm a professor of politics and law, I want to deny these things are happening in Uganda at this time. I tried even to be the appeal to say, no, this is not happening. I want to rewrite the history of Uganda, but unfortunately, even in the Amin era, they are saying these things maybe may not have happened because no one had evidence. But right now, everything is on Twitter, everything, you cannot deny it, you cannot rub it.
But what does it speak when a man comes out to tell you, I have Eddie Mutwe, and I've taken his photo, what will you do? And you don't do anything. What does that speak of us? Before we look at them, what does it speak of us?
Our generation?
Yes, someone can rub it into your face that I have your man, so do whatever you can do if you want.
That's why I said for Rajib and for Muhozi, they are, I don't know, victims of circumstance. We've been handed over too much power. We can't control, but we have abused. And I don't know where it's out of control because this thing has gone viral internationally. And you cannot reverse it. And unfortunately, for me as a scholar of international politics, I believe such a thing. I know, like our CDF, I don't believe now he can go to Europe, anywhere in the West. I believe so. Because of this, I know the gravity. I wrote my thesis about the International Criminal Court. And why? Actually, in my thesis, my PhD thesis, I was saying it was a reason for the creation of African dictators. Because when they fear, they don't give way. In my own belief, I thought the fear of President Museveni, because he hadn't gone to these extents of the sun, but the fear of him giving away power made him hold on, because when he fears the international law, he's like, I would rather die in power. But now what has come out of all this is even now worse, because now for a son who is just about 51, because for him, his fear is at 80, anything can happen. Even if you put him in prison, he's seen it all. But now where does a 50-year-old go? Unless he's going to cause everything, because right now, by even yesterday's statement, I told you cannot cross to the euro. Yeah? I believe so. But now he has to do everything to also stay in power. Because now he cannot, by his action, he cannot release power. He cannot go away from being CDF and president of Uganda.
So we are trapped that he is going to be the president?
Yes, he has to be. Because what is the alternative if he's not the president? What is the alternative? Legal mind, what is alternative?
I think so Edgar is asking you. It's a very interesting point that Edgar says, are we really so much, to use the other word, that we have nothing to do? Your fantastic dad did a heroinous thing in 1978.
Exactly, yes.
To say no to Idi Amin at the time. Of course, they later joined Museveni, the crooked things in the bushes. But in 1978, they said, no, we have to mobilize to liberate our Republic of Uganda. You now, as a scholar of international law, and you're seeing this boy just abusing us here, having gone through all those experiences, you having gone through the traumatic experience as a child of somebody who your dad had to leave, there's nothing we can do. But before we respond to that, I actually found something very interesting again out of your thesis. You did not suggest or argue, did you, that because of the establishment of The Hague, the International Criminal Court, that the likes of Museveni, from an African perspective, decided that they would not leave power. So in other words, the International Criminal Court has become an impediment to democracy rather than a remedy to this guy saying, no, if I take action, then the consequences.
Rightly so.
Okay. Please conclude, sir. Please conclude on this.
And to conclude by saying what we are doing, some of us have decided to come up with conversations. That's why we are here, because that's the only alternative. Otherwise, if we lie the nation that we should also go to Ruwero, it cannot work. Actually, I believed so that, and that's something, actually I'm being exonerated, because I said, this Obote I've read about. By the way, if you know, Museveni has been coached by Obote. All his politics of gerrymandering and everything, he's a student of Obote. So I believe,
but anyway, carry on.
Obote was not so bad that it necessitated people to go to the bush. If these people had, actually to me, Obote is one civilian politician we had in Uganda. All these other guys were army guys, Amini and Museveni, but Obote was a civilian. So if we had countered Obote with just conversations, we would have had solutions. So now to say that now we go to military to counter a military regime, an empowered military regime, I believe my own self is that we should have these conversations.
So are you reserving yourself to slavery?
No, you know, not that we should be slaves in our country, no, but we should have, if we don't have these conversations, I predict that you're going to start seeing, I was in Vancouver 2 months ago, and you're starting to see Ugandan, an exodus of Ugandans start running away from their own country.
Yes.
So what happened in 1970, in the 70s, of Ugandans going out is starting right now. Okay. And I thought, for example, that's why I said the CDF is a victim. As a victim, he was a refugee at one time. He wouldn't want to see other Ugandans take up refugee status. Him.
Kakwenza is in refugee status because of that gentleman.
I don't know exactly, but what I'm talking about, if he hears a conversation start, I think he should be. Today I was talking to one of the military men, and he was so tribalistic that he said, no, it's, if you've noticed, even by the word of the Katikiro, the undertones of genocide are starting to play themselves in Uganda. And these are being tribalistically fronted, but because the army general, the army official, because who I talked to, who happened to be my student, said that, no, now the approach, the CDF has to change an approach because the president was so friendly, and so now they are seeing the laissez-faire kind of approach. So they are saying that he has changed the approach so that people know these things are for no-go area.
Yeah, Rogers, I think you're very true, because I've also had that sentiment before. And I was talking to General Naloiso in an interview that we did, and she said, for you people, Museveni is taking you lightly. I wish I was given the opportunity to be a president of this country. I would show you how you implement. So everybody is trying to say, this gentleman is trying to at least be a strict version that is going to make sure there is implementation of processes and projects. There is no corruption. You've heard of how he has been dealing, and at least maybe he's famous or notorious for being strict.
Yeah, and that's what his handler, and I believe the person who was his handler, that's his method he has come to. Yes. To because, and he even told me sadly that those tweets are really his, and that is his work attitude. And for me, I'm saying if it is a work attitude, let them mention to us so that we voluntarily leave this country, because some of us will not stand this kind of attitude.
Thank you so much. Brooke Williams Chikomeko, thank you so much for watching. Sir, to members of Godfrey Henry Mangeni, Katoka West, all of you are watching. Brian at Hayden, I see Batenda Konge, James Powers, Uganda, SG Omuntu Wansina member Angela, all of you are watching. Thank you. Continue sending in your messages. I'll be reading them as we continue with the program. In fact, I'll also mention Julio Hilk Josh. You are live from Luemiaga, Zimbabwe. Your team, Honorable Sechkubo forever. Thank you so much. Let me come to you, Mr. Ochieno. On this blatancy of doing anything and nobody is going to, you can do whatever you want. For me, I have done what I've done. That kind of attitude, laissez-faire attitude of, I don't care. How do we go about this? And how does it really affect us in the case of Eddie Mutwe?
It's very sad. It's really, really sad. Actually, in one of those clips, you hear a woman crying in the background. So possibly either that's his partner, his wife, somebody's quite clearly crying on the side of Eddie. But number two, the whole thing looks rather dramatic. And you know what? NRA is actually the worst regime this country has ever had since independence. And it's absolutely shocking that NRA could accord itself this title and want to have it in pride like Robert Students almost wants to celebrate. You could see that the whole thing is so acted. And there was that woman in that ugly blouse, top in the clip. She's basically telling people to come around. I don't know whether people like my Mbejas and others were watching, to line behind the car to make sure that when this guy is pulled out of the car, people don't see him. So basically they're offering human shield. So it's very deliberate act. But number two, I think you guys have not talked about
what are they hiding?
Of course, the fact that the guy has been excessively tortured. But number two, that you can remember that Wangadia for the Human Rights Commission a few days ago issued a statement, wrote a statement, quite impressive, first time really, to ask Muhoozi to release this guy, basically, and I think gave them notice within 1 week. So basically, people haven't said that in part this is what I think Muhoozi is trying to fulfill, because if he didn't, maybe he would basically be in contempt of court equivalent, because the Human Rights Commission has got the powers of High Court.
Yes.
And so for that reason, maybe this young man has chosen or imperatively had to do that. Because in any case, I think it was going to leave the regime very awkward, because all these are arms of the state of his father. So the guy is handed over to a massacre court. This by the army chief. This by an army chief who's Mr. Museveni's son. This, you see, the police officers, at least people dressed in police uniforms. So then you say, where is law and order in this country? Which arm of government is responsible? Why, when if Muhoozi wanted to whip this boy, he could easily have instructed his father's Inspector General of Police to go and pick up this boy in a police vehicle, take him to maybe to Rakitura police post, beat him, do whatever they do, come back in police, and then come back and okay, then when he comes to declaring, say that we have...
You take him to police that... the police is also being beaten.
But you get my point. No, but of course, in this case, they've used the police.
The police was beaten.
No, here, they've used police vehicles. I'm just trying to say a sense of decency, where you could sort of try and sort of justify. But the fact that he uses whichever arm of the state operation so suits him. He's so arrogantly abusive that it is nothing short of excess impunity that Mr. Muhoozi and his father and their system are emulating. Nothing short of saying that this is what's coming, which I can get from Rogers, Robert. If you consider that elections are coming in a few months' time, if you consider that tomorrow NRA guys are busy mobilizing themselves across the country, they even closed our National Assembly. UPC has suffered. UPC suffered for nothing in this country. We delivered everything for you guys, then you guys broke. So Parliament is even closing because NRA has got to go ahead and do its nonsense around town, using your money. So this is the chief bodyguard, or one of the bodyguards, of the official political leader of opposition. Not an opposition leader in the bush like Museveni and at some stage Lule was, where, or the Kairas were. Official leader of opposition in parliament, meaning equivalent of Paul Semogere's bodyguard. It's extraordinary. It would never happen. It's extraordinary. It would not have happened.
Obote couldn't do it like this.
And it couldn't even happen.
Obote couldn't do this.
He couldn't. So it's happening in our eyes. But what is it? It's just the other week they'd beaten up these NUP guys were in Kawempe. And guess what? The MP of Kawempe died. And you can link part of his death to torture by this NRA regime. And then you go us back to the last elections. And you see the biggest victims of torture in this country were supporters of NUP, again, predominantly in Kampala. Now, whatever message...
This is what I've also been mentioned. It's not only now the opposition. A police post in Lubowa was attacked, or cordoned, by some soldiers, and the OC there was beaten, and other policemen were beaten. So, this does not look like it's of an opposition. Everybody can fall victim.
So really, I was trying to bring you towards that there's something happening in this country, which shockingly, I do not think that people in Uganda who are in politics, there are very few politicians. I'm one of the few politicians. Even people predominantly in politics, I'm sure he's in politics. I'm sure he's a politician. And ordinary civil Ugandan citizens like your parents, I don't think people really appreciate. Meaning what I've just described is completely unacceptable. And these a few months to elections. And I think these, as you yourself said, people who disappeared in the last election, predominantly from Uganda, and predominantly NUP supporters, predominantly young people, and predominantly young innocent people, our language, some of them have not been seen. In any case, we've always argued that had many of these people been up to something like the terror that Museveni was doing, the terror that Kaira was doing when the UPC was discovered, because this guy was generally involved in terrorism, just arraign them in court, arraign them in court. And in most cases, Ugandans who've been caught by NRF here, they would actually simply say that, oh, you're trying to protect us, we are trying to sleep, because you make us sleep, so you injected us to sleep, so we're sleeping. So go ahead and begin to beat them up. But it's not happening. So what is it? I think the ground has been set in such a manner that we continue the politics of fear, come the next elections, and it's a fait accompli. I noticed something that I dare say. If you see some of the things that NRA is trying to do across the country, if you see the fact that NRA the other day went and bought off people from opposition leaders from Acholi, and if you see that NRA went ahead and criminally gave Museveni, my God will remember you, 100 million Uganda shillings to NRA legislator, and 1 million shillings to
parish,
to PDM. Museveni is giving these people money to go and prepare themselves, because I think Museveni got the shock last elections that it was no longer business as usual. But I think Museveni is preparing himself so well that come the next election, he will try his level best to politically control areas where he's able to control, militarily control areas where he's got to control militarily, and do everything possible to make sure that it's impossible for the opposition to have a critical number. That really is what Mr. Museveni is doing. I want to repeat. Politically, what he's doing, including what they've done in Acholi, including this 100 million shillings, which I've heard from other sources that actually it's not only NRA legislators who got, that legislators from the opposition, including those ones who put on raid in the name of UPC, whatever kind of stuff, and whatever, got this money. Yes. And that actually leaders, legislators from opposition political parties may have got more than 100 million shillings because they're actually much more priced. What's Museveni doing? Yeah. Museveni is buying his longevity, buying guarantee for his life, as my brother here is saying, to make sure that whatever happens in the next elections, they don't lose, and whatever happens, that possibly he retires in heaven without handing over to anybody who is not NRA.
Thank you. Thank you. It's 3 minutes to 8 p.m. You are watching the Hotline Show. It's now time we take a break. When we come back, I'll be talking to Charles, but also we shall be entering the topic of discussion of the day, labor rights in Uganda, and of course, how government can help in protecting and implementing labor rights in this country. We take a break. We still have 1 hour to go. Please stay here. Let's take a minute right about now. Thank you.
Go to the church, though.
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, recorder. Do you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk. The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
What did church do?
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanye now, Bikoda. Did you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk. The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Welcome back from that break. You're watching the hotline. This is Digitalk TV. We're always here every Monday. We start from 7 to 9 p.m. having a conversation about some pertinent issues that are happening in this country. Today we look at the government role in protection and job creation in this country. Has it done enough? Have we followed the labor laws? Have we even protected our employees to be able to, make a productive life for themselves? That is what we're going to be talking about. And to talk about that, I have Mr. Barigayomwe Rogers, who is the chairperson of the Labour Party in Uganda, and of course Mr. Joseph Ochieno, who is the president of the UPC, and of course Charles Kazooba, the executive director for the Center for African Affairs and Diplomatic Studies. We're still continuing. In case you have questions, queries, anything that you'd want us to talk about, feel free to drop it in the comment section. That is at the Alternative Uganda, at Digitalk TV, on either platform, Facebook, YouTube, even on X. You can drop those comments. I'll be reading them as we continue with this program. Let me come to you, Mr. Kazooba. In just a few minutes, tell us what this experience of Mr. Edward Sebufu and many other Ugandans, this experience of being abducted, tortured, and sometimes later arraigned in court. What do you think about this particular phenomenon?
Number one, I see General Mohozi Kainerugaba as my elder brother, because we're almost in the same age bracket. I'm 45, he's 51. So it is the same generation that should be taking over this country. I, as an individual, I don't support torture because torture is a shortcut to getting information. It is a laser way of getting information. And I'm one person that has been advocating for empowerment of our investigators, both in intelligence services and the criminal investigations of police, so that enforcement is made easier, enforcement and prosecution. Then innocent people can easily be exonerated through investigations. Unfortunately, the NRM government and the NRA government has not put adequate resources in those two departments, intelligence services and criminal investigations, because it would have really helped to sieve out the wrongdoers and then they are punished accordingly. So for what is happening, if you could remember, I think a month or 2 months ago, General Mozi made a statement, and they didn't take it seriously, regarding Tom Magambo.
Yes.
The one in charge of criminal investigations in police. That guy had also come from intelligence services, then elevated and made chief of CIAD. So it appears the military does not trust police when it comes to crime anymore. I think you might have also seen the clash between police and Special Forces Command officers at the Revoa station.
Yes.
So there is, I think, a quiet disagreement on enforcement. Maybe the military believes that the police has either been infiltrated or it is not doing its job. Now, looking at the bigger picture, the country is at crossroads. The country is literally divided between those that badly want power, who want change, and they want it now, not tomorrow, and those that want to retain power. So there are so many underhand tactics being used from both groups to reach their ambitions, to retain power at whatever cost, but also to get power at whatever cost. Now, that is where we are. So when we see some of these things coming out, I some time back warned that we are going to see worse cases. People will even die. Lives will be lost because until we agree on the modus operandi as a country,
okay,
we are going to tear ourselves. We are going to harm ourselves.
But so far we are seeing one side harming the other.
Which side is that?
The one harming the victims, like the Edward Sebufus.
because you are seeing you're only focusing on those with those already in power. But I want you to also see those that are not in power, the conduct.
How
are they conducting themselves?
How are they conducting themselves?
If, for instance, NUP were burying their own, would they allow me there?
What's the point?
Would they? You have seen you've seen Bobby Wine tell you the other day that they are going to create militia groups.
You perceived he has been clear about that there are groups to help in protection of the vote and the electoral process, peacekeeping groups. They are not.
What do you expect a politician to say? A politician like Bobby Wine. Haven't you seen him attack a particular ethnic group? Haven't you seen him repeatedly attack that group? Why would he? So these things are not coming from out of ordinary.
Yes, as you conclude.
You saw the arrest of his brother, Nyazi. Do you think it was by accident? Because the information I got actually is criminal. It is true that something is being planned.
But why don't you just charge these people?
Now, the charging, we've started with the enforcement. That there is a problem with the enforcement. Yes? So, these people are saying, no, we are not going to wait for the law enforcement to release the people we want to be charged. And you also have to, as you are debating that, in your mind you should know that there is a contest, actually a fight. This is not even an election. It is a pure fight for power. There are those that want it at whatever cost, and those who want to retain it at whatever cost.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. 10 minutes past 8 p.m. Because of time, we are going to move on to the next issue. Some of the labor rights that are in the Employment Act of 2006 in this country include the right to fair wages, reasonable working hours, rest periods, and protection from discrimination. There is also a right to annual leave, right to maternity and paternity leave, rights to unionize and collective bargaining, right to work in safe and healthy conditions, protection against discrimination, right to grievance and disciplinary procedures, a right to severance pay, right to notice period, a lot of rights that were enshrined in this particular article. In fact, you can go back and clearly read it. My question to you, Rogers, is these rights look very good, especially on paper. How practical are they working in the lives of the various employees in this country, the servants of the land?
They are not working, and on a scale of 10, I would say I give the NRM 3 out of 10 on rights, especially of workers. The past regimes could have done much better on the rights of workers. What happens is, and I tell what I like about the conclusion from my brother, that where we are going is sort of a context. And the context now is, why are people doing a do or die on political power? And I also blame the opposition parties. Right now, someone asked me why we cannot engage as Labour Party. Is because why engage when people's lives are at a risk? Or what is my engagement if it's going to put my family, my children at risk? Is power a do or die? So about the Labour Party, the Labour rights, the Labour rights will only be realized, and I tell people, ideologically. An ideology is the idea in that until the parties which come and they have an idea or they have the center of their party as a worker, then we'll realize the labor rights. Right now, I'll give you an example that the ideology, and you've seen it come out of the NRM as a military regime, is to hold power using the military. And I'll tell you that a soldier right now earns minimum 1 million, the lowest paid soldier. Yet, the lowest paid worker in the country, who I would is not even documented, because this country has refused a documentation, let's say, of a maid. All of you people, most of you are holding maids under, I don't know, it's like as if they've been trafficked, because one, in the real labor laws, you are housing them off. That means they are working more than the 8 official hours.
Yes.
So you are making them work about 20 hours. Even the sleeping, it's under your roof. Then they don't have any minimum wage. They don't have actually written contracts.
Yes.
So this regime is not going to protect that. It's not going to protect the Kadamas. It's protecting the army officer already by giving them a minimum of 1 million. So however much you go and clap for it and you say all those nonsense when they give you 1 million for PDM, 1 million over a year or over 10 years, what is it? What we should be advocating for.
I was surprised that there are people in Uganda who have never held 1 million shillings.
And yet you've talked with, you say the military people, each one gets a say of 1 million.
Yeah.
And that is about the most educated person in some instances, a professor like me. I don't get even $1,000 in some instances. It shows you that it is the workers are not at the center of this government, and they will not be. The investors are more lifted high. They are more treasured.
Okay,
and
because the populace itself has not directly, one would say directly contributed, for example, to taxation directly. These investors are paying taxes directly. They get it from their pocket and they pay.
But the easier thing, because at the center of it, is to put everyone in the middle class. Then that's when you will realize more.
But is your populace empowered enough? Is it educated enough? Is it enlightened enough? Or we're just going to brand them a certain class? Do they have the quality of being named that?
Yeah, that's what the Labour Party is working towards. That we will put in place. I will take you back, even in to give credit to my brother here, just in the UPC government, when we had these cooperatives.
Yes, yes.
Something like that, cooperative. People were empowered at the grassroots. They had what would call the warehouse receipts, whereby someone, when they have their coffee, their cotton, in those days, their beans, they would be empowered well enough, and they didn't need to be manipulated by this PDM that these are handouts which even no one pays. This is just handout which does not improve a person. And there people at the grassroots, I will tell you that my parents would tell me that just in holidays, the coffee my mom picked from their Matuga garden was enough to take her to school. Which child of yours here, Ugandan, can pick anything can pick in just one, they're in holidays, in just 3 weeks or 1 week, can pick anything which can take them to school. We are all gambling, all of us here, all Ugandans, you're all gamblers.
But you see, they give you the money and you eat it and you don't even want to pay back. For example, the PDM, it may be small as it is competitive highly, but after you're given, you just run away. People don't even multiply them, the little that is given to them.
Because...
So is it a system issue or is it our indiscipline as Ugandans?
It is a system of the government encouraging gambling. The way you see betting, the PDM is like betting. They have not empowered people to have a product, and when the production comes up, you hear now they've started with it, trying to register every worker, trying even to take away what people have. The whole thing about us, Labour, is that we want to empower the people. When the people empowered through minimum wage, for example, this is one of the things we are advocating for.
That one, the man told you,
no, that is
minimum wage bill is sending our investors away.
Do you know why? Because he wants to rely on few investors. Yet other regimes, including even Idi Amin, was empowering the Ugandan. Now, for us, our center is to empower the Ugandan, not those investors. And most of those investors who you're talking about empowering, right now they empower them with our taxpayers' money.
Yes.
Look at all the new investors, including Magogo and all these Panetta and everything.
Even
they give them, look at what happened to Munyonyo and everything. They are not investors, they are giving them our money.
Okay.
Yeah? And now there's been another set of investors who are politicians. Apart from that, there is no genuine investor, there is no genuine worker. And instead the worker is being oppressed.
Okay, let me first come to Ochieno. Mr. Ochieno, we decided to privatize the economy of this country and said private-led, right? And that means privatization was really rampant, especially as this government or the system was starting. A vision that to them, because of private-led, that means the private sector will be leading in everything. So we left the education system to the private sector, health, hospitals to the private sector. Now we are coming back to say the government is not doing enough. Are we being fair to government, or is it our problem as Ugandans, sir?
The way you said we, as if
Ugandans.
the people of Uganda were consulted. NRA was never elected. Mr. Museveni has never been elected president. He was not elected to State House and has controlled the power since then to date, using Twitter and the power of his NRA guns. As far as the question of privatization is concerned,
yes,
I think it was basically Museveni, a few of his, hungry guys who came from the bush, who came to take and grab, and their foreign agents, the masters who helped them, a few Libyans here and there, and Anglo-American interests. Those are the people who privatized and killed our economy. I think my brother is trying to talk about the ideological context of labor. I must say that some of the efforts that founded labor, some of the efforts of the Bataka Party, later in 1940s or thereabout, those are the efforts that galvanized African Ugandans towards the late 40s, and that eventually led to the formation of Uganda National Congress, my political party. At the heart then were the grievances of the African Ugandans, and focus, grievance about the marginalization by the Asians, marginalization by the white British, and a few privileged guys in a few kingdoms who enjoyed feudal privilege, but that the African Ugandan wanted to make sure that they got fair prices for their coffee, fair prices for their tea, fair prices for their cotton, and fair prices for their labor, that whatever they worked, they got fair wages, and that they were reasonably housed, where they worked the decent and average working conditions and environments, and that they respected the citizens, and that their awareness continued to build to the reality that they owned in this country, and so therefore they started to agitate for independence. And that independence now pushed them towards realizing, interestingly, with the friends in the British Labour Party, including Lord Fiona Breakway, you and I are not particularly far of some of these things, that pushed as friends from outside. The progressive left ideology is global. And in established the global north, these guys did not believe support apartheid, they did not believe and support slavery, and they did not believe and support continuation of so-called colonies being controlled by the established white nation states. So in this case, the progressive left in Europe, and particularly in this case in Britain, wanted the British government to let go the colonies and let go and make sure that we Africans attained our independence and we become masters and owners of our own destiny and indeed our economies. And so that's so critical in 1950 and then 51, so the formation of Uganda National Congress in 1952. Uganda National Congress, as you know, our first president was Ignatius Musazi, this fantastic father of Uganda's nationalism, as we would call him, a guy from Luweero. And so these guys built around that, and DP, for different reasons about the Anglo-Catholic conflicts, it's a different story. DP was founded in 1954, sort of to counter some of these interests, because the Protestant establishment was fairly dominant in Uganda and the Catholics were being suppressed. But I don't want to stick there. So fast forward towards independence. Once we attained independence, the Uganda People's Congress, which had now become 1960, was clearly ideologically openly driven as an Africanist political party, whose dream it was not only to help attain independence and work with other parties to attain independence, but to transform the Ugandan nation state as a home for the indigenous Africans. So what do? They say, we create an enabling environment. That's what governments do. I'm not bringing to labor. Governments create enabling environments in which jobs get created, including private sector. But predominantly left-leaning political parties, we know that while business operates, meaning industry operates side by side with the public sector, governments, by investing in infrastructure, which will be from roads, schools, whatever institutional infrastructure, as you call them, holistic. Museveni's infrastructure is just a kraal going to his kraal, and because the road is the infrastructure. But infrastructure that broad sense. The more you open up this, the more you create enabling environments, and the more you create jobs, labor, the workers, where we sell, you are offering your labor to this television network, and you deserve a fair payback. But when you come here, you deserve a fair seat, including where they make sure that the chair does not compromise health and safety things, does not compromise your back. And then when I come here, I deserve to have my fantastic tea because I'm your guest, and some of the privileges that sometimes we would expect as guests and opportunities. But most importantly, that the person who works, including possibly the cleaner, gets the minimum wage. UPC worked towards that. Amazingly, as early as 1984, for these young guys who were born around the time of Muhoozi, they need to know that the minimum, the lowest paid worker, your camera lady, I'm sure, will need to listen to this, were paid 6,000 Uganda shillings. In 1984, government set up 6,000 Uganda shillings as sort of technically the minimum wage. Now, 6,000 Uganda shillings...
Technically, or it was the minimum
wage?
Okay.
It was.
Okay.
6,000 Uganda shillings in 1984. If you take inflation away, take it to 1987 when these bandits stole our money, and bring it to today. The other day, Mr. Museveni is quarreling about his refusal to allow the minimum wage today of 136 Uganda shillings. James, 136,000 Uganda shillings in today's shilling. 6,000 Uganda shillings, if you consider what NRA did. In 1987, NRA killed 2 zeros. Okay? So you add 2 zeros to that 6,000 shillings today. NRA stole 30%. This bandit stole 30%. It has never been found anywhere. Museveni, you guys and your bunch, this guy stole 30% of our money.
Okay.
So if you add 30% of that, today's minimum wage, and I'm telling the labor man, should ideally be 780,000 shillings to today's money, disregarding inflation. Now, Obote and Museveni, who goes to heaven, who needs to be locked up in Luzira for life.
What do you think about his reason for refusing the minimum wage bill?
Cheek.
Why?
A guy who pretends and claims to be a Marxist is an ideological contradiction. But the guy has never been ideologically driven. Museveni, since he was born, since those days when he was stealing that milk that his wife Janet talks about in the Goa taken to his father, the guy's been about me, myself, and I.
Okay.
The guy's been very much about himself. Ask Mr. Bianima. So no, it's a nonsense. There is no economy, by the way, which does not talk about minimum wages in terms of guarantee. Basic guarantees in terms of protection of workers. And minimum wage does not, it's really not about a threat to industry. Normally, crude businesses like his friends, the Pinetis, would say that.
Okay.
But sensible billionaires, sensible entrepreneurs, sensible billionaires will know that you reward labor, they deliver for you. And the rewarding labor is making sure that the minimum wage is merely a cushion.
Okay.
It's merely a cushion.
Okay.
And that beyond that, you know what your governments do? Governments go ahead and build schools. Governments go ahead and build hospitals, and we did. Governments go ahead and build infrastructure. Governments go and help and build houses. Meaning an average house in 1984, if you finished university, one, you're guaranteed a job, but two, you don't have to buy the house. So long as you get a job in public service, you'll get a government job.
Okay.
I mean, you'll get a government house. That is what government does about labor.
I'm going to come back also, because it's the labor unions that should be advocating for this, though they are very silent. I want to listen from you, Mr. Ochieno, on that issue, but let me first bring in Mr. Kazooba. What is the problem, Mr. Kazooba? In fact, let me ask, is there a problem in the labor rights in this country, according to you?
I started working when I was, I think, 18, 19, 20. And my boss was a military officer. So the issue of contracts, labor rights, maybe even at that time I didn't even understand them. But he would pay me as and when he felt. However, even to date, I thank him because he molded me to a very aggressive and responsible citizen. When I see the situation today of our young people, what our young people are going through, I ask myself, are we being idealistic or realistic? These things we are asking for. I've been running my own companies, I think, since 2013. But I've never employed anybody on a permanent basis because it's impossible to do it. And I thought it was a situation unique to me alone, but when you look at other companies being run by Ugandans, owned and run by Ugandans, very few can afford to pay workers well and on permanent basis. Yet, more young people come from universities and they want to earn better. And they cannot find suitable job placements. So if us indigenous Ugandans cannot provide decent employment for our Ugandan young people, not because that we don't want it, but because it is literally impossible. What about the investors, the so-called investors? Let me tell you, Mr. Karuhanga, for our companies, even those that are listed on the PPDA portal, you will compete for, let's say, a contract. What you go through to get that contract is hell. By the time you execute the job and you're left with some little money, you're just praying that you keep surviving. So, first of all, corruption has eaten away what the business community would have earned decently. Because you have to get tenders out of corruption. Now, the little money you are going to be left with is also taken away by the taxman. So if you want me, for instance, to pay a graduate 1 million, I already can't afford it.
But I think he's saying that those circumstances are caused by the system.
Yes.
Your inability to do that. So do we say that it goes back to them?
No, my problem is with the corruption.
Let me give him an example why the corruption comes. And why even I say now I apologize on behalf of our parents and even give credit to the UPC government. In around 1986, my father was the district administrator of Kabaale district under the NRM regime. We were staying on the government hill in a government-built house. And it had all the facilities. Like you see all these houses you saw in Kololo, they were government houses. Right now, the NRM has sold off all the houses. And you know the spring of corruption, the cause of corruption is everyone. Even the young people who are just leaving university, they want to build a house.
Yes.
And you know what? The pressure of building a house. At that time, they will tell you that in the 60s, and because a civil servant had a house, that caused them comfort. They had a vehicle, they had all these things we are saying which come with the labor rights. Yes. So they were comfortable enough to live.
Not to steal.
Yes, and not to steal.
And serve their country.
And to focus on the job.
Exactly, because these governments, the UPC government, Idi Amin, who had inherited that habit from the colonialists, made it comfortable for a worker. Okay. Right now, you look, is it another DCN? No worker has a house. Not even, apart from the president, who has 2 state houses, or even many outside, not even the vice president of this country has an official residence. Thank you. And no, I have to pin it.
Yes, please pin it.
You are in Machinye here. There is between here, they call it Pakalasti. There is that road which is like...
the one connecting to Entebbe?
It's like whatever.
It's just a road that is...
and it's a road we are using as... If you see the traffic on it, it's about 100,000 maybe vehicles a day.
It's a good shortcut to it.
Just above this matching, is it Chizungo, there is where some dignitaries live, just on the top of Machi. That's where the paved roads are, the tarmac roads are. When they have less than 50 vehicles a day. So it shows you the priority of government. It is not on the common man.
Thank you.
And
let him first conclude his point. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree with him, but...
so he has told you, like, it's a systematic...
But also that was imposed on us by these Bazungu.
No, that's not true.
Via the structural adjustment policies. Liberalization came as a condition. It's not that it is something that came out of the blue. It was a condition out of the structural adjustment policies.
Why did you reject homosexuality then? And you didn't reject that?
Yes, yes.
So my other issue, Mr. Karuhanga,
Yes, please.
is the training. In fact, the professor here, they are doing us a disservice at universities.
Yes.
Today,
You killed the public schools.
Let's continue. Yeah.
when I'm running my organization, if I have two choices, a graduate from Kenya and one from Uganda, I would rather employ the Kenyan.
Why?
The Kenyan will deliver and they are committed to work. The Ugandan will work 1 month. He wants to come at 9, leave at 2, but also demand a promotion and a pay raise.
Thank you.
Within 6 months.
That's very true.
Now
I've had an experience.
that is the Ugandan.
Yes.
Between which years?
But the Kenyan is committed to work, to deliver results.
Exactly.
So when you are having Ugandans, your company may not be able to meet the expectations
Okay.
compared to a company that is using Kenyans
Yes.
as workers.
Okay.
So there is a problem with training at universities. I think, in my opinion, we should have introduced another additional 1 year for purely practical training at universities. I don't know whether, because I've seen some universities now, they want to introduce practicals throughout from first year, I think, to last year. I don't know whether that will help.
Even the primaries and secondary.
Yes,
So the issue we are having is ethical morals, even in the
I want
education.
you to conclude that point. Please, we'll conclude.
So you're going very, very soon, you'll see there is a difference between graduates from, for instance, Victoria University and those from Makerere University. The ones at Victoria are likely to retain their jobs longer than the ones at Makerere because of performance.
Okay, for now, let's first stop here. He brings out a point, Rogers, of competence of these people, who the employees, the labor market, the quality of the labor. And this is very true, because I have studied or been with journalists who don't know how to write a news story. But he went to school to do journalism, but they cannot write a news story. I had an experience where in our side hustles, this employee wanted a pay raise, and their merit for the pay raise was that I now have a child, so I want you to increase my pay. The economy is increasing, please increase my pay. And I'm asking this person, have you been doing your job right? They also do not believe that they've been doing their job right. They accept that, yes, I have been coming late at the job, I repeatedly miss jobs, but they still want a pay raise. So, when we are looking at the quality of the labor, to what extent are they to blame for what is happening in the country?
Yeah, the biggest, the quality of labor is compromise. You're right. And if you're to trace when the compromise started, actually I say the education system of Uganda from independence is lowest in the regime of the NRM. Because before, even when they came, here, when you remember KIU, Kenya in Uganda, usually Kenyans would come to Uganda. You know Makerere University, most of the presidents of Kenya, Tanzania, Nyerere, all those people were trained here. But right now in ranking, Makerere is lowest in the NRM regime. Why? The simple one, for example, I will tell you, is when we grew up, I'm around 47, we used to have educational supervisors in schools who would come and supervise. These days, we don't hear of any of such a supervisor. And if he is to come, he is just to pick not to supervise, to pick money. Because I recently went to Nsambia, here, St. Peter's in Zambia, and I was surprised that St. Peter's in Zambia, next to American Embassy, supervised by this government, in a dormitory this big.
Yes, sir.
They have about 400 students sleeping in it. The educational system has been over-compromised. I have a picture at Intare School where I was, where President Museveni was meeting Milton Obote, the Prime Minister then. Yeah? And you see, at that time, even the Prime Minister could supervise an educational system.
Yes,
and these people in education was an esteemed thing, highly regarded, and definitely we know such governments built schools, are not quality schools, and most of us have been mentored. But I would challenge the current regime to show us the institutions they've built instead. And you talked of those SAPs that they were enforced on them. Who enforced them? How come they rejected like homosexuality? Why could they reject such rotten rule? I mean, they came to destroy everything which was created.
In the moment they were right to them. In that moment, the idea felt feasible.
No. At that time,
yes, one would say.
I think they were desperate.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Maybe
those times called for desperate measures.
No, in 1987. What was special?
You're from
no,
the hangover of Amin's sanctions.
That's why, by the way, on the other side, I don't believe in NUP, because at that time, even his would-be-in-law right now, Professor Karujire, said this. It was just a wind of change. He looked at these guys just coming from the bush, excited, and he knew they are not professional enough. Just like some of us look at this NUP, and we know it cannot carry the country anywhere. Because that time, these young people who had come in their 20s, and later on, it's President Museveni who confessed, he said, these old people who are in the civil service are the ones helping me. And that's how we preserve people like Mutebile. These people were mentored. They were in the UPC government, the Kijukas, most of the people, technocrats, the Kajulas, they were people who had been mentored by the system. But these new people, and you talked about the thing of human resource. Right now, we don't have credible, competent human resource running anywhere.
Rogers, because of time, what do we do? Because we've dwelt on the problem, which we all validate is there.
We overhaul the system. We overhaul the system. What we call big bang. And we have the conversation as a nation. Everyone, because everyone is interested. My grandchildren will be here. President Museveni's grandchildren will be here. We have a conversation to see. Nyerere was decent enough. After some time, he accepted. He said, no, some of the system like Ujama and everything. And he repented to the country, said, I've done my part. This is what my contribution is. The rest, as if I'm to continue, I will just make it worse. It is a conversation we should have with our president, President Museveni. He has, I believe, he has done a contribution in one way or another. But as he goes, everything is turning worse. So we should have that conversation as Ugandans, and he agrees as the father of the nation right now. And he also admits to some of the credit of the past leaders. And if you notice, by the way, in his body language, and that's why he rewards people like his tormentor, he has admitted that people like Obote had some credit they added to the country. So we admit that he has also had some credit to this country. But he can no longer, he is instead retrogressing.
So if Museveni says he's staying here for 15 years, he's not going to hear your solution. Should we leave the employees just there, dilapidated, continuing to suffer? Because I'm looking for maybe is there a practical solution to say we can maybe improve this? Because that is, your solution is at the privilege of Mr. Museveni.
No, the solution is, of course, the workers when we withhold our labor. It happened, by the way, in South Africa. In ANC failed, by the way, people don't know. The present President Ramaphosa was a leader of the union, workers' union. And these people, where the whites were being arrogant to their appetite, then the mine workers were like, okay, we will not work. And what happened is, the whites saw that if we came here for money, if the economy crashes, what will we get? They sent Ramaphosa to Robben Island to negotiate now a political comeback. So the solution is governments which are ideologically centered about the common man, the laborer. And that's how we'll have all this improved.
The last time the laborers tried to put their tools down, Museveni was threatening them. You are putting them down, you shall go get other people and they will do your job. So you doctors, you would rather come back.
He can do it, but he cannot enforce that continuously.
The teachers, not the doctors.
They were, but he cannot do it continuously. Once they are well mobilized by because these unions, what he has been doing, when they organize, he goes, picks them few and disorients them. But if they are sensitized, and that's why I say it's no longer feasible for NRM to just impose its ideology on people. But they should even invite good ideas from parties. Like Labour Party, we are able to mentor them in that area. If they give us the Ministry of Labour, we would, because we would help them mentor them in that area.
Better. Thank you. Thank you. Let me come to you. That's a long shot. Let me wait and see. Mr. Ochieno, where do we go as a people really to solve this particular challenge? But also, there's an issue of the unity of the labor. They're not united. Even in the traders, for example, Kasita is saying something else. The Kampala Arcade traders are saying something else. They're saying you're compromising the leaders. You're not helping the labor unit. So there's a lot also of divisionism among the labor. How do we solve the problem of labor in this country, especially after Labor Day?
I am substantially frustrated. In fact, one of the things that made me delighted today was to join Rogers on this platform. I hope we're able to have a conversation in which we're able to galvanize our strategic thoughts around labor rights. Rogers, for information, I've been a trade unionist since I turned 18. I am driven by that, and I was a member of trade unions throughout my work in the UK. The trade union movement is the founding organization of the British Labour Party, which is my political party. I can tell you that I saw the debate around the minimum wage in the UK. I saw the debate around compulsory nursery spaces for young children at 3 years of age to be provided by local councils. And I saw what business people like the Pinetis and Pinetis friends were saying, that councils would not be able to afford nursery spaces for children, and that minimum wage would destroy jobs. That is the language of excess capitalists and money looters and not people who are progressively about people. So that said, I think Rogers is right that nothing's going to happen in this country unless and until Mr. Museveni retires. There's going to be no fundamental structural change in our national economy until Museveni leaves power. There is going to be no fundamental structural change, therefore, in whether you talk about agriculture, you talk about environment policy, you go about education, talk about health, or on corruption. Nothing fundamental is going to change. So what do we do? I think you're asking us to manage. How do we manage it? Yes, we can manage it, but one of the last things we cannot do is to support Museveni in continuing to sink the country. I think my view is that political leaders need to mobilize and organize around saying no to Mr. Museveni, but also seeking to persuade him the tone that Roger is saying, that look, you've been a terrible man with this country, but we don't believe in the death penalty. You've been a terrible man. We don't believe that you should go ahead and spend the rest of your life in New Zealand. You've been a terrible man, but UPC gave this country the Mwiri motto of and now for God and my country. So we believe in God. So we are not going to punish you. Just let go. We shall do a kaunda. We shall do in Nyerere. I was privileged to have met Kenneth Kaunda towards the latter part of his life. Very conciliatory guy at the time, recognizing some of his shortcomings at the time. But look, as far as this country is concerned, the idea that my brother here, Charles, is talking about, teaching, I do not know, I am one of the few people who don't believe that there was anything wrong with the education curriculum that created me. There was absolutely nothing. And possibly future UPC government, and this is possibly breaking news, would actually review the current education curriculum with a view to returning most of it, possibly not all, most of it to the curriculum that brought up Mr. Joseph Ochieno from primary one to excellent top into Mwiri, to excellent Makerere University, to the excellent Ochieno that is today in the UPC. You know, the issue is not curriculum, it's the environment of the job market. We had engineers who did work, you know, we had doctors who were excellent, we had teachers who were excellent. I'm a grade one, son of a grade one teacher. I can tell you that my brother died a head teacher, my sister died a head teacher. But my brother was amongst the most coveted teachers in Kenya. In fact, primary school teachers in the 80s, Ugandan primary school teachers, your camera lady needs to know this, Uganda's primary school teachers were coveted in Kenya, and they taught secondary schools, and Kenyans passed excellent. Okay. So it's not about the quality of us, it's a culture, it's an attitude. Possibly when you have people in the Ministry of Education who cannot write the word excellent, I repeat, if you possibly have people who are pushing educational policy in this country who cannot write the word excellent, maybe those are some of their problems. You know, so really, no, we know what the issues are in this country. We know what are the issues in this country. This regime is just sick. This regime is tired. This regime has no clue, you know, what to do with the country. And so finally, this mess about structured adjustment program, Charles, I reject that. I know you may come from the right wing of politics a bit, you know. Obote refused the structured adjustment program. I want to say it for him. Structured adjustment program. The Bretton Woods institutions, IMF and World Bank, came to Uganda fast post Idi Amin because they wanted to befriend us. And Obote said, no, we have a manifesto, we've got a program, we've got a 70s, 60s program, and we've mapped out ourselves. We know what we want, we know what our priorities, we know where we're going to get what money, we know how we're going to raise what money, we know where we want grants, and we know where we want aid. But whatever it is, we are not going to keep, because part of this, the idea was, I know it's a bit around it. Part of what structured adjustment program was trying to do was to say, kill jobs. Part of what structured adjustment program was saying, pay them less. Part of what structured adjustment program was saying, you know, don't invest in public services. By the way, investment in public services, including
in a few seconds,
including I'm really sorry, including minimum wage, you know, it helps to uplift the welfare of people, but at the same time to cushion the economy.
Thank you.
So it's basic economics. Where this Seven and this group studied economics in Darussalam, I have no clue.
Charles, as you conclude, please give us how you think we can better our labor rights in Uganda.
Well, me, I don't agree with some of the colonial thinkings. Minimum wage, what, blah, blah, blah. Times have changed. Those are outdated policies. We should focus on things that add value in the circumstances. But I also agree with Rogers that there is a need for a revolution, and I've been very consistent that we need a revolution. A revolution, I don't mean going to the bush, but reorganizing, not just the government, but reorganizing the entire country. And to do that, we must have a meeting of minds. What disappoints me is that these guys in political parties, they never present our country with their plans. How can a political party be competing for power and they don't have a 50-year plan for a country, a 100-year plan for a country? Instead, we keep gambling. You even look very confused as a country. Yes, the NRM that is in power has the 2040, sijui what, plus. But what about these other parties? Do they sit down and do some serious intellectual work other than just debating the negatives of NRM? Let each party present this country its plan, long-term plan, that this is how we want things to be done. But you know, some of them will tell you, you know, when we do our plans, the small details will be stolen by NRM.
And they implement
and they do anyway.
UPC
That is NRM took our
selfish. That is
took our UP program.
Yes,
and sold it. No, they took it to a cattle crowd. No, Museveni took UP program to a cattle crowd. It's criminal, man.
I thought you are here for Ugandans, not for Museveni.
And of course I am for Ugandans.
So if they
in Jesus' name I reject Museveni, I've got nothing to do with it.
If they implement your ideas.
No, Charles, UPE program was a 60s program to create a massive transformation of this country for the future in the 60s. That this man has now turned into a firmly broken thing.
Charles,
if Museveni implements some of the ideas,
no, he did not implement it. He killed it.
Then it is good for Ugandans.
Okay.
So let us put Ugandans first.
Okay.
Rather than looking at your petty competition.
Thank you so much, Charles.
No,
that is
opposing
Charles
AUP cannot be petty.
Charles Kazooba
killing
is
the education future of our children cannot be petty.
For the Center for African Affairs and Diplomatic Studies. The gentleman in the middle is President of Uganda People's Congress, one of those factions that he doesn't want to call it that, but it's still a divided political party. And
yes,
last but not least is Mr. Barigayomwe Rogers, who is the chairperson for the Labour Party in Uganda. And my name is Edgar Mathew Karuhanga, your host for this particular conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in. From the time we started up to now, it's around 9 p.m. So thank you so much. You can continue the conversation online. That is at The Alternative Uganda on Facebook, but also at Digitalk TV, still on Facebook, but also on YouTube. You can drop us those comments and we'll be able to make this program better. Don't forget to subscribe. Every time you subscribe, we have more engagement, which even helps us improve on the visitors and the guests that we bring and the programming, which in the end will be better for you. From the entire team, God bless you. I'll see you again tomorrow at exactly 8 a.m. We'll be here breaking dawn, having a conversation with Uganda. From the entire team, God bless you. Good night. See you tomorrow.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.